The Mediterranean Sea stretches endlessly in every direction as darkness swallows the horizon. No compass needle points the way, no GPS satellite beams down coordinates, no electronic chart displays position. For the ancient mariner standing on a wooden deck 3,000 years ago, the night ocean represents both infinite possibility and mortal danger. A single navigational error could send his vessel crashing into hidden reefs or carry his crew into the trackless void where starvation waits. Yet somehow these sailors crossed vast stretches of open water with pinpoint accuracy, reaching distant shores they had never seen before with nothing but their eyes, their minds, and techniques so sophisticated they would astound modern navigators. The question isn't whether ancient sailors could navigate at night without instruments. Archaeological evidence proves conclusively that they did. Phoenician merchants reached Britain regularly by 600 BCE. Polynesian voyagers discovered islands separated by thousands of miles of ocean. Greek traders established colonies across the entire Mediterranean basin. The real mystery lies in understanding exactly how they achieved such extraordinary precision using methods that seem impossible to our technology-dependent minds. The answer reveals navigation techniques so advanced, so perfectly adapted to human sensory capabilities that they represent one of the greatest intellectual achievements in maritime history. These weren't crude approximations or lucky guesses. Ancient navigators developed systematic approaches to oceanic wayfinding that enabled reliable, repeatable voyages across the world's most challenging waters. Their methods were so effective that some remained in active use well into the 20th century, long after mechanical instruments became available. The foundation of ancient night navigation begins with a fundamental shift in perspective that modern sailors struggle to comprehend. Today, we think of the sea as empty space to be crossed, with navigation as the technical problem of determining position and course. Ancient mariners understood the ocean as a living environment filled with readable signs and patterns. Every wave, every wind shift, every subtle change in water color contained navigational information for those trained to interpret it. This environmental approach to navigation required developing sensory awareness far beyond normal human capabilities. Archaeological evidence from maritime cultures worldwide shows that navigator training began in early childhood and continued for decades. Young apprentices learned to feel wind patterns through their skin, to smell land from distances of 50 miles or more, to detect the subtle changes in wave behavior that indicated approaching shorelines. These weren't mystical abilities but highly refined observational skills based on deep understanding of oceanic physics and meteorology. The most crucial element in ancient night navigation was mastering the celestial sphere. Unlike modern navigators who use stars as reference points for mathematical calculations, ancient mariners understood constellations as dynamic guides that moved in predictable patterns throughout the night and across the seasons. They didn't calculate position using star sights and chronometers. Instead, they followed star paths that led directly to their destinations. Star compass systems developed by Pacific Island navigators demonstrate the sophistication of ancient celestial techniques. These mental maps divided the horizon into 32 distinct directional sectors, each associated with specific star groups and their seasonal movements. Master navigators memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of individual stars, understanding exactly when and where each celestial body would appear throughout the year. This knowledge enabled them to maintain accurate headings even when clouds obscured portions of the sky. The star compass wasn't a physical instrument, but a cognitive framework that transformed the night sky into a readable navigation chart. Experienced navigators could determine their approximate position and desired course simply by observing which stars appeared at specific points on the horizon. If certain constellation patterns looked wrong for their intended destination, they knew immediately that wind or current had pushed them off track. Corrections could be made before small errors accumulated into dangerous deviations. But celestial navigation represented only one component of the ancient navigator's toolkit. Ocean swells provided equally important directional information that remained when constant even stars were invisible. Long-distance swells generated by distant weather systems travel across entire ocean basins in remarkably straight lines. Ancient navigators learned to identify these primary swell patterns by feeling them through their vessel's motion, using the consistent wave directions as compass references that functioned day or night regardless of weather conditions. The technique of reading ocean swells required extraordinary sensitivity to ship movement and wave behavior. Master navigators could distinguish between local wind waves and distant swells, identifying multiple swell systems running simultaneously in different directions. They understood how swells refracted around islands and land masses, creating distinctive interference patterns that revealed the presence of land long before it became visible. Some Pacific navigators could detect islands from distances exceeding 100 miles simply by interpreting changes in swell behavior. Wind patterns provided another reliable navigation reference that ancient sailors exploited with remarkable skill. Trade winds, monsoons, and seasonal wind shifts follow predictable patterns that remain consistent across decades and centuries. Experienced navigators memorize these atmospheric patterns for their sailing regions, understanding exactly when winds would shift direction and how those changes related to geographic position. A navigator sailing from Egypt to Cyprus knew that certain wind patterns occurred only in specific areas, providing confirmation of position even in complete darkness. The integration of wind and wave information created navigation systems of extraordinary reliability. Ancient sailors didn't depend on any single environmental cue but constantly cross-referenced multiple sources of directional data. If star positions suggested one heading while swell patterns indicated another, the experienced navigator knew that atmospheric conditions or ocean currents were creating drift that required compensation. This multi-source approach provided built-in error checking that prevented small mistakes from becoming catastrophic navigation failures. Archaeological discoveries from shipwrecks and coastal sites reveal that ancient navigators also used sophisticated dead-reckoning techniques that tracked vessel movement through time and distance calculations. Without mechanical logs or chronometers, they estimated speed by observing water flow past the hull, timing the movement of floating objects and feeling the vessel's response to wind and waves. Distance calculations combined these speed estimates with careful time measurement using water clocks, candle burning rates, and celestial movement patterns. The accuracy of ancient dead reckoning depended on intimate knowledge of individual vessel characteristics and performance in different conditions. Master navigators understood exactly how their ships behaved in various wind strengths and sea states, enabling precise speed estimates based on sail configuration and hull motion. They knew how much leeway their vessels made in crosswinds, how much speed they lost in head seas, and how loading conditions affected sailing performance. This vessel-specific knowledge was accumulated over years of experience and passed down through generations of maritime families. Navigation techniques also incorporated detailed understanding of oceanographic features that provided position references in deep water. Ancient navigators knew the locations of underwater seamounts that created distinctive wave patterns on the surface. They understood how ocean currents varied with season and location, using current strength and direction as additional navigation references. Some cultures developed techniques for reading watercolor and phosphorescence patterns that indicated specific geographic regions or oceanographic conditions. The social organization required to preserve and transmit this complex navigation knowledge reveals sophisticated educational systems that ensured critical information passed accurately between generations. Navigation schools existed in many ancient maritime cultures, with master navigators taking responsibility for training selected apprentices in the complete range of wayfinding techniques. The training process typically lasted decades, with students gradually learning increasingly advanced skills through practical experience under expert supervision. Memory transmission systems in ancient navigation cultures reveal the extraordinary cognitive techniques that preserved vital wayfinding knowledge across centuries without written records. Master navigators developed mnemonic methods that encoded complex astronomical data, ocean current patterns, and seasonal weather information into memorable songs, chants, and ritualized procedures. These weren't simple folk tales, but sophisticated information storage systems that could preserve navigation data with remarkable accuracy across multiple generations. The chant systems used by Micronesian navigators demonstrate the precision of oral navigation traditions. Individual songs contain detailed descriptions of star compass bearings, wave interference patterns around specific island chains, and seasonal variations in wind strength and direction. The rhythmic structure of these chants served as built-in error correction, making alterations or omissions immediately obvious to trained listeners. Students spent years memorizing hundreds of navigation songs, each containing essential data for voyages to different destinations. Physical training complemented the cognitive aspects of navigation education in ways that seem almost superhuman by modern standards. Ancient navigators developed sensory capabilities that pushed the boundaries of human perception through deliberate conditioning programs that began in childhood. Young apprentices learned to detect minute changes in wave motion by lying motionless in shallow water for hours, feeling how different swell patterns affected their bodies. They practiced identifying wind direction changes while blindfolded, developing sensitivity to air pressure variations and temperature shifts that preceded weather pattern alterations. The development of night vision represented another crucial component of navigator training that required years of systematic preparation. Ancient sailors understood that effective night navigation demanded visual capabilities far beyond normal human standards. They developed techniques for preserving and enhancing night vision that enabled them to detect subtle differences in water surface patterns, identify distant land masses from slight variations in horizon darkness, and spot the faint luminescence that indicated shallow water or underwater obstacles. Training protocols for night vision enhancement included specific dietary practices that modern research confirms actually improve low-light visual performance. Ancient navigators consumed foods rich in vitamin A and avoided alcohol consumption before night voyages, understanding intuitively that these practices enhanced their ability to see in darkness. They learned to use peripheral vision more effectively than direct sight, exploiting the greater light sensitivity of rod cells located away from the center of the retina. The psychological aspects of ancient navigation training addressed the mental challenges of spending weeks or months at sea with only natural navigation references for guidance. Master navigators understood that successful wayfinding required absolute confidence in traditional techniques, even when environmental conditions made normal navigation references difficult to interpret. They developed meditation and mental conditioning practices that enabled navigators to remain calm and focused during storms, fog, or other challenging conditions that might panic inexperienced sailors. Navigation societies within ancient maritime cultures maintained strict protocols for testing and certifying master navigators before they were permitted to lead independent voyages. These examinations went far beyond simple knowledge tests, requiring candidates to demonstrate their abilities through actual ocean voyages under increasingly challenging conditions. Apprentice navigators might spend years proving their competence on familiar routes before being permitted to attempt voyages to unknown destinations or during difficult seasonal conditions. The certification process typically culminated in solo navigation challenges that tested every aspect of the candidate's training. A potential master navigator might be required to reach a distant island using only traditional techniques, then return by a different route to demonstrate complete mastery of the navigation system. These tests often took place during challenging weather conditions or seasons when navigation was most difficult, ensuring that only the most skilled practitioners achieved master status. Regional variations in ancient navigation techniques reflect adaptations to different oceanic environments and cultural priorities. Arctic navigators developed specialized skills for dealing with ice conditions and extreme seasonal variations in daylight. Mediterranean sailors perfected techniques for navigating in relatively enclosed seas with complex coastlines and numerous islands. Open ocean navigators in the Pacific created systems optimized for voyages across thousands of miles of empty water with no intermediate landmarks. The tools and instruments used by ancient navigators were remarkably sophisticated despite their apparent simplicity. Wave pattern detection devices used by Pacific Island navigators consisted of carefully constructed stick charts that represented swell interference patterns around specific island groups. These charts weren't maps in the conventional sense, but three-dimensional models that helped navigators visualize how ocean waves would behave in different areas. Master navigators could feel these wave patterns through their vessel's motion and use the information to determine position and proximity to land. Wind direction indicators developed by ancient sailors included portable devices that detected air movement with extraordinary sensitivity. These instruments used lightweight materials like feathers, dried grass, or thin wooden strips arranged to respond to the slightest air currents. Experienced navigators could detect wind direction changes minutes or hours before they became obvious through other means, providing early warning of weather pattern shifts that might affect navigation accuracy observation. Ancient navigators conquered the world's oceans not through technological superiority, but by developing human capabilities that seem impossible in our instrument-dependent age. They transformed themselves into living navigation systems, reading the ocean's hidden language through heightened senses and accumulated wisdom. When you next see stars reflected on dark water, remember that these same celestial patterns once guided wooden ships across trackless seas, proving that human ingenuity and determination can overcome any navigational challenge nature